Well, welcome to a new Harry's Farm video, and you find us today in a field of linseed. It's really spectacular at this time of year, the linseed. It comes into flower and we've got about 112 acres of it, and it's sort of made for Instagram. Anyway, I'll go into details on that in a moment. What I'm going to do today is just concentrate on the arable side of the farm. I've got John over there with the big sprayer just doing some fungicides and growth regs on some wheat. I'm going to explain a bit more about the sprayer, why we use that machine, particular machine you'll see in action in a moment, and agronomist, and explain how we get to put the right chemicals on and when, etc. First of all, linseed. Well, this is my replacement for growing oilseed rape. It's this break crop that you can't grow, well, you can grow continuous wheat or barley, but you get a dip in yield. So you tend to put a break crop in and then have a 1 or 2 years of a wheat crop, which is your main crop. So this is my break crop, winter linseed, and it's been actually a really good year for it. We put it in well, September, just after when you normally put rape in, and before all the rain came. And it's a consistent crop. It's the 3rd or 4th year I've grown it, and it's done really well. What you're looking for is consistency. We haven't quite, I think it's consistent until I put a drone up and then see it's fairly patchy in places. But even in the areas where it wasn't grown, it's growing back fairly well at the moment. It doesn't take a huge amount of input, and it always used to be the worry about harvesting it, but by putting the winter linseed in, it comes to harvest in sort of July, when it used to be one of the last crops. So it's coming back because it's a winter crop. When we used to put it in the spring, it was a bit tricky. But you can see there, full of buds. You can see all the flowers, but there's so many more to come in. And what I want to do is extend its flowering time, because this is where it's, once they're pollinated, etc., that's the seed heads. And I know from last year, even if it does rain a lot, those seed heads will stay. It doesn't shed seed or anything, so we've done pretty well with it. The harvesting is the tricky bit. We'll worry about that come July. We'll just see what the weather's going to be, but basically this is it in its prime. It's been pretty good weed control. You get about a tonne an acre or thereabouts, perhaps a bit more. But yeah, it just makes a welcome change to me from all the yellow you used to get with oilseed rape. You're now seeing this spectacular lilac linseed everywhere. And the other nice thing about linseed is when you get a year like this, when it's decided not to rain after raining every single day up until sort of mid-March, it's one of those crops that seems to cope reasonably well when it really turns dry. We've only had 2 bits of rain. We'll discuss this later when we have a look at the wheat, because there isn't a lot of leaf area there, so it's not pumping a lot of moisture out the ground compared to a more bulky crop. Right, what we're going to do now, I can just see the machine coming, so we'll go into the other field and have a look at the winter wheat and what we're doing in there. Here's John. Now this is a Bateman self-propelled sprayer. The width between the booms is 36 metres. That's as big as you get really in the UK. There are some bigger sprayers on the continent. They got 40 metre, but this is pretty big as far as they go. It's an amazing machine. He's travelling at about 14 kilometres an hour, and so you get a spot rate where you do 30. I can't do 36 times 40 in my head, but even if he was at 10 kilometres an hour to allow for turning around, you're doing knocking the door of 40 hectares an hour or 100 acres an hour. Crazy speeds from when I started farming, just the speed of this machine, and how quickly it can cover the ground. But it's all about timeliness when you're growing crops. And I just want to explain how we decide what's going on the field. So he's put in a fungicide and a growth regulator on at the moment. I think might be a little weed killer as well. I don't decide what chemical to put on. I have to go to an advisor who's called an agronomist. And all farms have an agronomist that look over the ground. And he's like a doctor. He is trained and knows all the available active ingredients, etc. Looks at your crop, what you've got, what disease pressure is, what's happening in the country, and then comes up basically like a prescription with what the crop needs and when. So I can't buy the chemical. It's actually, as I say, going to a doctor, then a pharmacy, who then supplies what we should be putting on the crop. That comes out. John then is fully trained spray operator, does a little exam each year. The machine has to have an MOT, all sorts of things. And that's how we control what actually goes on the crop. And it's highly regulated, as you would imagine, but it's an essential part of farming today, I think, for commercial farming. The other thing to say about this machine, not only does it put the weed killers and growth regs, etc. on, it also puts the fertiliser on, because we use liquid fertiliser on this farm. And so you can swap over with this machine to either do fertiliser or sprays, and you use a different line, as it's termed, on the booms that has a sort of dribble bar, it's termed, and it's, instead of putting it into a fine mist to coat the crop, that's what the sprayer's trying to do with those nozzles, is to coat as much leaf area as you can. When you put in fertiliser on, all you want to do is to hit the ground. So it's a trickle sort of nozzle. You'll see it just puts a line out and it wants to go into soil, and then the roots of the plant then pick up the nitrogen and you get a boost in growth. So this machine does both jobs. The only thing with fertiliser is it's a higher rate, water rate you're putting on the crop. A typical dose, you work in litres per hectare, 300 litres per hectare, while I think he's spraying today at 130 litres a hectare. So he can go twice as far on a tank full than he can when he's doing fertiliser. Now, it's an expensive machine. You used to, well, I'm carrying a tractor, so I thought I'd just show you. When I started farming, it was all about having a sort of spray on the back of a tractor. But a tractor like this, I've nicked this off my grandson, was designed to do draft work. You put a plough or cultivator in the back, that pressure does that, digs, those big wheels give the traction, the weight transfer as you're ploughing puts more weight on those back wheels and you get more traction. Think 911. My grandson really needs a four-wheel drive tractor and slightly updating his fleet, but that's four-wheel drive just gives greater traction. The unfortunate side effect of all this is these tyres do quite a lot of crop damage, and there's quite a lot of weight at the back here because it's all about torque transfer to the ground. You don't need that sort of traction on a machine like this. So you want the lightest touch you can to go through the crop with minimal damage. He's got row crops on, as they're termed, so narrow tyres that don't run over the crop. We just walk into the crop. So by having a 36-metre tram line, it means we are cropping more of the ground. It's not a very clean tram line here. You see how it tilts its boom up as he turns around to make sure it doesn't drag on the ground, so it doesn't hit. So it's sort of flared up. The wings are like this at the moment, and you'll turn in and then they'll flop down. That's all automatic. He's not touching it. It knows when it's about to spray. Down it goes into work position, and away he goes. You also see a massive clearance on that machine. So when he's spraying oilseed rape, which will be about this tall, he can still spray it. It's still got enough clearance underneath. They tend to have special sort of motors on the wheels or hydraulic drive. I'm not sure if this is direct drive or hydraulic. It's a 180 horsepower machine, this. But just so they've got no sort of axle between the wheels underneath, they've got this huge space underneath to go through tall crops. That machine is about £180,000 worth of machine, and hence it's just too expensive for one farm to have. So we sort of, John machinery shares over a number of farms. He does my spraying and next door as well as his own, because, you know, spot rate of 100 acres an hour and probably working rate nearer to 50 acres an hour, time you filled it up again with water and gone to the next field. He can cover a huge amount of ground in a day. So 400-500 spray acres a day is quite easily achieved with a machine like that. But it's all down to timeless, and it's all decided by this agronomist. Also, the agronomist actually decides on the fertiliser as well, because that's highly regulated. So there you go. There's a sort of background to what, when you see those machines going around, they're very clever things. I should also add that he's satellite controlled. It knows where it's sprayed, and if you come down a tram line at a diagonal, it will start turning bits of its off. They're called sections. So I'm coming along here, I've already sprayed that bit, satellite navigation will know that, so it'll turn that bit of the boom off, and then the next bit, as you go over the ground you've already sprayed. So there's lots of things going on in there. It's a nice place to be, hands-free, aircon, etc. So there you go. Now let's just have a look at some other things that have been going on the farm away from here. Now we're in that field where I was putting that mustard in, which is this just fallow, and look at it, it's all grown. I put it in and the rain came perfectly, 20 mil of rain, and this is what we've got. We go down here, this is the mustard coming up. I can't get over how well it is coming up. You've got a little bit of flea beetle damage on it there, but basically it rained just at the right time and everything has grown. It's the best crop I've grown using that spinner. You can see here, the only trouble I've got now is the pigeons have discovered it. And there you go, so it's eating off there, and you've got true leaves as they're termed. You just see cotyledon and then true leaves coming up. So this is the mustard, and it's gone a treat. And what I quite like is because I use that rake, I've got rows as well. If you look very carefully, you can sort of see rows in the crop, but it's not really a crop. Less successful is actually the area of wild birds I put in over there. We had the forecast rain came, but it was only 3 mil. And it's not enough to actually shit the seed, unfortunately, so I'm praying for a bit more rain. In fact, the whole farm is pretty desperate for some rain. If you think about this lockdown period, it's rained basically twice. So the 20 mil when we put this crop in, and then the 3 mil. 23 mil over 2.5, 3 months. Yeah, that's tricky at this time of year when it's the main draw of the crop. So all farmers are doing a rain dance at the moment. Actually, my best wheat is all starting to sow drought stress, so it's all curling up. It's known as sort of spiky leaves, because what it's doing, it's trying to shade itself from the sun to stop the translocation. And the wheat is actually in boot. You can see the ear coming up. So hopefully by the time I do another film, it would have rained. One more thing to show you. Yeah, I'm pleased to report that Mark has finished the wall, and here it is. We put this in so he could complete the wall, because you have this sort of edge to work to. We had a sort of slight ceremony when he put the last stone in the wall.
Okay, last stone going in.
I can't get over how sharp and accurate it all is. And this, as I say, there is a tiny bit of concrete just on the end, just so these don't fall. It keeps it fairly static. But basically, this is dry stone, no mortar, no nothing, and it's sort of tied together with these, which are termed toppers, on top. And that sort of joins the two together. Someone did ask whether they put a stone all the way through. The dilemma with that is there aren't enough long stones to be able to do it in this part of the world. So generally it's not done, but if one actually fitted, it would do it. But I just love how we've done this curve down here, just to finish it off. I mean, I don't know if it looks better from the other side or this side, but I just love this curve here, just lovely. So there you go. That's what's been going on Harry's farm. Next time we'll probably look at some other things, some cows arrived and calves down the volume, that sort of thing. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.